Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to this week's Power Divination for the week of January 13th through the 19th of 2020. Now, this week's Power Divination is going to get a little bit weird with the placements that are happening. I was guided to go all in and to hold nothing back in terms of revealing the truth that is hidden in the Maya, in the illusion. So some of the things that we talk about this week in the Power Divination might be triggering. They might be things you've never heard of before. They might be things you are fluent in and are like, yes, thank goodness someone is talking about this. With that being said, I'm just going to take a moment and invite us all to call in our guardians, call in that golden sphere of light to surround us and to shield us so that we may remain invisible on the energetic planes, on the astral planes, from any interference throughout all time and space from any beings who would not wish for this conversation to be had here and now in this moment. And with that, let's get started. So let's go and look at the Sidereal Astrology for this week. Some big things happen, beautiful beings. Big things happening. So you're going to see more lines. I have added in all of the lines to all aspects because I wanted to point out some things that are happening right now. So yes, you are likely aware that we are in the midst of what we call a Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Now, Saturn, right here, the little cross with the hook, 27 degrees of Sagittarius. The Sun, circle with the dot in the center, 27 degrees of Sagittarius. Pluto, the P, 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So not only are we in a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, we are in a Saturn-Pluto-Sun conjunction. Now, Saturn-Pluto conjunctions are not entirely rare. They happen every 34 plus years. So the last time we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction was in 1982, 38 years ago now, where we had Saturn and Pluto at 3 degrees of Libra. Now you notice in this conjunction, the Sun is all the way out here. It was pretty close to the moon though. That being said, still about 12 degrees out. So this is looking at 1982. Now the last time that we had a conjunction before that, so if you are 72 and older, you will have lived through 2 Saturn-Pluto conjunctions now, with this being your third. Now, the last time that we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Sagittarius was back in 1518. Saturn 15, Pluto 15 in Sagittarius. Now, you'll see in this one, the Sun was at 24 degrees. So this is the first time in a very long time to go back to when the last time a Saturn Pluto Sun conjunction happened. We would be going back into, a time when this software would not calculate the date for the astrology. So I just wanted to, have you tune into a little bit of the story behind these conjunctions. So having the Sun here is very important to acknowledge, and very few articles and astrologers are acknowledging that the Sun is conjunct to Pluto and Saturn right now as well. Now, this conjunction began yesterday on January 12th, and it continues until January 14th, so tomorrow, Tuesday. Now today, Monday, is the last day that the sun is at 27 degrees. The sun moves to 28 degrees and, or excuse me, actually the sun is conjunct throughout this entire thing. The sun moves to 28 degrees of Sagittarius on the 15th. So the sun is there with this conjunction the entire time. So we are also looking at, let's point out a couple of other things that are happening before we dive into our analysis. We are also working with a Grand Trine in fire. You'll notice from the South Node heading down to Uranus, cutting over to the Moon, we are looking at a Grand Trine. Now, this Grand Trine, actually here we also have Jupiter at 14 degrees, so we are looking at really the energetics between the both. They're basically holding hands here. So, and I actually, now that we zoom in, this Grand Trine is with Jupiter, not with the South Node. So when we're looking at a Grand Trine, we're looking at it in a fire sign. We also have a kite that we're looking at here. So you'll see we have our trine. Then if you draw from this point, if we draw down to the ascendant, from the ascendant we draw down to Uranus, another triangle, not a grand trine, so not a right angle triangle here, is going to draw and add in a kite. So this point here is the anchor point, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means as we go into it. A grand trine, so this triangle right here, is essentially a perfect equation, and it brings expansion and good fortune. Now, when Jupiter is in the trine, which we have Jupiter in the trine here, Jupiter can expand so much because Jupiter is also a planet of expansion that it can bring the energy of what we're focusing on of this Grand Trine to a point of explosion. It's like expanding upon expansion. Now, Grand Trines in fire are also expansive because fires consume and grow and expand. Now, Grand Trines in fire represent our action and our spirit and our excitement and passion and heat and temper and irritation and ego. Everything begins in fire. The zodiac begins in Aries, a fire sign. The Big Bang began with fire. Aries initiates. Fire comes first. So we are being initiated into a new beginning. And that new beginning might feel like a massive pressure as Jupiter being at the head of this trine. And it's holding hands with the other planets in Sagittarius here. It's holding hands with, this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It's not too far off from this massive energetic that we're also going to be talking about. It's holding hands with the South Node, right? It's being activated and energized and expanding all of this energy in the 11th house. It's expanding and expanding and expanding until we literally birth a new star in a universe. We explode like a star that's giving birth to a universe. So this fire energy, when we're in a Grand Trine of fire, it shows us the fantasy of the goal. It's very visionary oriented. It is a spiritual ideation. So Grand Trines in fire, it moves, whoever has Grand Trine in fire in their chart, myself being one of them, it moves the tongue of these people. And they're speaking towards the goal. They're very visionary. They're speaking towards the bigger vision. They're speaking towards, the heaven's goal. And it's showing us right now, we're speaking through the tongue of the universe's goal, the universe's vision for us. So when we're looking at fire goals, right? What are the fire goals? Well, the first fire goal is to become more of itself, to spread, to grow stronger, bigger, and brighter. So we're being invited right now to become more of our true self. And we're going to talk about that a bit more. Now, the second goal of fire is that it consumes as it is growing to preserve its life. And fire, in order for it to grow, it needs wood, it needs, material, it needs something to feed on in order to continue to grow. So when these Grand Trine of fire energy comes in, if we don't have our life set up to feed the fires will consume whatever is around us. Fire doesn't discriminate. It just consumes in order to grow. So right now, it can be a very potent moment in your life to have an offering for what you want to be feeding the fire now. If we don't have something to feed the fire, if we don't have somewhere to go, we can be easily consumed by this energy, and this fire energy becomes like a hungry monster that's blazing through and trashing the place. And we might delude ourselves to thinking afterwards that we have had this grand spiritual experience, that something holy has happened. And yet we are lying in the wake of destruction to ourselves, to others, to our families, to our communities, because fire will consume anything. And if we do not consciously feed the fire what we want it to consume, it can end up bringing a lot of destruction. So the moral of the story here is that we are shaping how this Grand Trine in fire is going to move us through what we give to the fire. If you've ever, when you were a kid, and I definitely used to do things that I wouldn't do now because I didn't know what was happening. But when we were a kid, we were sitting at a bonfire, we'd throw all these different things into the fire because everything that you threw into the fire created like a different gas and a different color, and greens and purples and blues and all these different colors based on what you threw into the fire would happen. Now, I don't recommend throwing plastics and cans and things like that into the fire because now I know better. That being said, what we threw into the fire shaped the fire. What we limit and hold, we stop the fire from spreading. And fire, when we stop it from spreading, it seduces us. It's very seductive, fire. If you've ever stared at a fire long enough, it lures you into this dance with it, and it's hypnotic. And you can just sit and stare at fires for hours and do nothing because it is so seductive. It is so hypnotic. And it seduces us into thinking that we need to create our vision right now, that we must be in inspiration right now. As the moment inspiration strikes, we have to create our vision board. We have to put it out into manifestation. We have to be moving towards our big goals right now, that there is a level of importance in that our big goals are more important than walking the dog and putting out the trash and writing a letter to a friend and putting that post on social media and taking that class. When in reality, nothing is better than the other, right? There is no, this is better than that, this is less than that. Whereas fire's energy, though, and its need to be first, will demand that you put it before anything else. Now, this can be the medicine that we need as the collective, to be putting our big visions before the mundane. Because if a society, and we're looking at we're looking at the collective energy right now, if the collective has become so rigid and discriminate and anal and obsessive and so hyper structured that no change, there's no wiggle room for new to come in. Think of politics. There's no wiggle room for new to come in right now, right? When a system has become so rigid and anal that this fire energy coming in can be this burst that burns through those rigid walls, that burns through discrimination, that burns through the obsessively organized. And it can be like this hyper organized person finally snaps and starts coloring the walls and throwing clothes all over the place because holding and constantly being so anal about everything needing to be crystal clear and organized and clean, it can create, your own little mini prison that you're living inside of. And if we look out into this world and we look out into society, we can see the remnants of having built our own mini prisons. Now, fire. Grand trines in fire hold a very Messiah complex. So much freedom and vitality and need to be first and imaginal source energy that is literally informing and being informed by the universe with its very presence. Having an outlet for this energy is so important. Having an outlet for me right now is going all in on the creation of this video, and you're going to understand what that means as we start talking about Saturn and Pluto. Because this energy, having Grand Trine and fires in my chart means that it really inspires me to speak and to move through words. Now, if you're more of a physical person, it might mean getting up and exercising and running and dancing and moving. And if you're so hot, maybe it's taking a cold shower or a bath and plunging yourself into water. Now, one thing that can happen when this energy is moving through is when it starts to go in and just, if you're noticing a challenge and a restriction during a time of expansion, really tune in to questioning, am I offering anything to the fires right now? Or am I just letting the fire burn through my house without even, thinking about, okay, what's in front of this fire right now? So the affirmation that I invite us to hold is, help us to burn in the white fire, the eternal flame of spirit. Help us to burn in the white fire, the eternal flame of spirit. The white fire, the eternal flame of spirit, knows what is to be burned. Now, we'll continue to weave in this energy as we move forward. Let us start to talk about this Pluto-Saturn-Sun conjunction. What I know you're all waiting for. Now, as I mentioned, this conjunction happens every 34 plus years. The last one was 38 years ago. And honestly, if you go into Google, and I did this because I wanted you to see, and this is the wrong piece here. If we go into Google and we type in Pluto-Saturn conjunction, you're going to get a lot of survival. You're going to get a lot of deep shadow, survive and protect, what this means for the world. Yesterday, there was a lot of articles that were about how to survive the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Because people are notoriously afraid of Saturn. Old school astrology thought that Saturn was evil. Saturn was Satan. And if you get into and start looking at a lot of the posts that are coming out during this Saturn-Pluto conjunction, you're going to see a lot of deep shadow healing and pain and survival. And, from this standpoint, it's really pointing to the planets and feeling somehow pained by them. It's feeling like from that lens of looking at the astrology, it's looking at the astrology as though we are a victim to it. And through the destiny mapping path of approaching astrology, it does not resonate for us to be in the truth that we need to survive this, that we are victims to what's happening, because everything is serving us. Everything is supporting us to move forward and evolve. Now, this conjunction is unique because the sun is conjunct with Pluto and Saturn, which means that this conjunction is about shining the light of consciousness into the depth of the collective psyche. Shining the light. The depth of the collective psyche is held in Pluto. Now, having this happen within Sagittarius, which is one of the last four signs, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, which are the universal signs because they represent the end of the journey where we tap into the higher vision through how we have grown, how we have evolved, how we have achieved, and how we have tapped into universal love through our journey through the zodiac. And Sagittarius deals with the maturity of the self and the evolved person. Because Sagittarius comes after Scorpio. So Sagittarius comes in and it's who we are after we've made our journey through the underworld, through the depth of darkness that is processed within the Scorpio. And as we make it to the last degree of Scorpio, where the phoenix rises into the light of our maturity, it brings in new vision. Sagittarius is a visionary. It is seeing from a higher perspective. Grand trines in fire are visionary trines. Now, when Sagittarius is constricted, it can feel and bring confusion, a confusion of ideas, a confusion of, what vision to tap into, a confusion of what is being shown, a confusion for how to make sense of things, a confusion of the needs. Now, some of that confusion might come in through, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the human design today. That being said, with this placement, the sun is really bringing us an auspicious alignment. Now, if you look at, and I want to share with you a different screen for a moment, because I want to show you what this looks like from the actual, if we're looking up into the sky, what this looks like. Okay, so this is taken from a sky scanner app, which is available on your phone, your smartphone, and you hold it up to the sky and it will show you where the planets, where the stars are at. Now, you'll see here, this was taken yesterday when this alignment began, when this conjunction began. And I'm glad I took it yesterday because the sun is not out here this morning here in Asheville. So we see Saturn here. You see Pluto here, and you see the sun. The sun, this is the actual sun. I held the phone up to face the sun. You'll see Jupiter over here. So when we go back to the zodiac, you saw Jupiter is right there in Sagittarius as well. Now, for all of you tropical Western astrology people who are believing this is happening in Capricorn, I want you to go and take out your smart app and your sky scanner or whatever astronomer app that you use on your smartphone and hold it up to the sun today, because you're going to see Sagittarius. And the exact astronomical placement of this conjunction is happening in Sagittarius. It is not in Capricorn. That being said, when we stare at the sun, and Pluto is slightly off here because the way that this is being depicted. Now, I want you to, when you stare at the sun, when you look at the sun and having your eyes closed if the sun is high in the sky, or wearing some glasses, protect your eyes, especially if you're not regularly stargazing or sun gazing. Project your energy into the sun. And as you project your energy into the sun and send out a beam of light that connects you into the center of the sun, you are beaming that light. And as you plug into the sun, you are plugging into Pluto, you are plugging into Saturn, you are plugging into the sun. So when we have this conjunction, the sun is now shining its light through Saturn, through Pluto, shining it onto the earth. When we look at it from the zodiac, everything's kind of next to each other. We don't get the big picture of how this is really, what really happens when something is in conjunction with the sun like this. Now, when we're in an eclipse, you can see that when the sun and moon are doing their eclipse thing, you can see the significance of that moment. Now, because Saturn and Pluto are quite far away from the earth, we don't see them in the sky regularly like we see Jupiter and Venus and Mars and Mercury. Now, looking at this image, you can see what's happening though. We are in a direct pillar of light that is translating the information from Saturn, from the sun, from Pluto onto the earth right now. And the sun is revealing. The sun reveals. The sun illuminates the darkness. The sun shows us what is in the shadows. It shines through and it reveals what has been hidden. Let's go back into looking at the zodiac before we go into that. So you see here Jupiter 14 degrees, that's in Sagittarius. That's why you saw Jupiter hanging out there. So with the sun this time around, we are being ushered into a new beginnings, Grand Trine fire. We are being ushered into the new golden octave for the planet, really for our solar system. And a new vision must be painted with the light, with soul. What the sun represents is soul, consciousness, and full participation. Sagittarius here sees what others cannot see since it sharpens. It's the arrow. It pulls back the arrow and it points it clearly at the vision and it focuses in. Because it's so focused and so clear, it's able to see what others might not be able to see. It's able to see clearly into the depth of our being. And in the depth of our being, in truth, is love. What we think are shadows are actually not shadows. They are on the surface of our awareness. Most people are living fully through what we call shadow, through the pain body, and are not actually living through what lies in the depth. Because in the real shadow is that which is pure universal love. Let that sink in for a minute. It's a part of the distortion of this mutant matrix that keeps us believing that what is hidden from us is our pain. Because when we really look at our projections and our patterns and our life experience, the majority of people are living through their pain body. They are living through their fears, through their victimhood, through their suffering. They're not living through true universal love, because if we were living through true universal love on this planet, there wouldn't be war, there wouldn't be poverty, there wouldn't be trash and pollution, there wouldn't be boundaries, there wouldn't be people imprisoned. These things wouldn't be happening on this planet if we were, in fact, living through true universal love. So when we really pierce deep into the shadows, what's actually in the shadows waiting to be revealed is the truth of love. So as this conjunction is happening within the cross of Maya, which we're going to go into in depth in a moment, and we talked about the cross of Maya last week because we entered into the cross of Maya on Saturday. We are now seeing the illusion clearly. We are now seeing the illusion, and we are able to see the truth. Look here with this Grand Trine in Sagittarius with Jupiter at its head. This is a gift. This is a massive expansion. And yes, it might be challenging at times to see this much truth. And if we're falling into the outdated mutant matrix, false god system of astrology, which is tropical astrology, we might be approaching this conjunction from a lens of fear. Because classical tropical astrology fears Saturn. I love Saturn. It doesn't hurt that Saturn is my ruling planet within Vedic astrology, that I've grown to connect to Saturn in a pure way. I've grown to understand the true essence of how Saturn serves us and supports us. Did you know that Saturn's rings are dissolving now faster than ever? That was this article. Here we go. Saturn's ring could be gone in just 100 million years. December 18th. Here we go. NASA reveals Saturn is losing its rings. Goodbye to Saturn's rings. Saturn's rings are disappearing. The age and fate of Saturn's rings. Why is this important? Why am I bringing this into the conversation right now? 100 million years for a planet is like a snap of a finger. It's very quick. It seems long to our human self that lives, 100 years. We're like, 100 million years. Holy cow, that's a long time. When we think of planets and stars being hundreds of millions of light years away, though, hundreds of millions of years is really not that long. Saturn is where the dark overlords first took hold of this solar system, and those rings around Saturn locked Saturn into a density cycle. And it was not actually Saturn that was sending darkness, that's sending this constriction, that's sending this illusion of time. It is the mutant matrix on Saturn that was and is the fear that people feel through Saturn. And it manifests this expression of our deep core wounds of human unconscious, of the truth of the dark overlords, whom also took over the earth. If we only had an astrological chart on the day of Babylon's formation, I would actually be really fascinated to see what that chart looked like. Now we're going to get into a little bit of Earth story, her story. And we're going to start to break down here some of the guises behind Saturn and Pluto. So when the Marduk-Satan family of the Anunnaki of the Orion and Alpha Centauri came and established Babylon, and this is not something that is being, you go into Sumerian texts and you will learn about the Marduk family. Now, the Marduk-Satan family, we are talking about that right now because Saturn has often been linked up with Satan. And I want to just break down these words for you here for a moment. Saturn, Satan, Satnam. Now, Sat is universal, it's expansion. It comes from the Sanskrit word, infinite, abundance, love, purity, consciousness, Sat. Truth is Sat. Now, when we add earn, if we look at the word earn is something that holds on to something that has died. It holds on to the ashes of something that has died. Saturn is the death of truth. So this energy that has been locking Saturn in phase, that has this cage around Saturn, these rings, was the death of truth for our solar system. If you start doing some research and hopping in, and don't just listen to me, go and research, look it up for yourself, fall down the rabbit hole of information that's available. Satan has often been linked to Saturn because people have felt Saturn being this like really dark presence. It constricts. Every 28 years we have this Saturn return and it's painful and it ruins our lives and it creates so much suffering and all these things. It must be Satan. If we go into the Bible, if we look at Numbers 22:22, if we look at 1 Samael 29:4, if we look at Psalms 109:6, when Satan comes in, it says Ha Satan, which is traditionally translated as the accuser, the adversary. Ha, being before Satan, is essentially the English equivalent to the, which means that Satan is a title that is bestowed onto a being versus the name of the actual being, right? Very important to distinguish that, because it ultimately is saying that this is a perspective lens that is cast onto someone. Saturn, the name bestowed upon the death of truth, that then was cast the guise of being the adversary. Because ultimately, when Saturn was locked into this phase, when the Marduk Satan family came in and established Babylon and used the translation between Saturn and the Earth for their, control mechanisms, that was essentially an adversary to the human angelic template that was here before. Now, the original pure Christian name of Saturn is Sata Ura Dev Shairaya. Sata Ura Dev Shairaya. That is Saturn in the Christian frequency. When we are talking about the mutant matrix, when we are talking about the corruption that has happened throughout our solar system, these planets, many of the planets were taken under control, as well as the Earth, Saturn being one of them. Not all of them, though. There were planets that were too far along in their evolutionary journey where they had already become luminary bodies, which meant that they could not house the darker agendas of these, we'll just call them overlords. That being said, if we remember that all time is simultaneous, that all time is happening right now, that means that, yes, there is the timeline where Earth and Saturn and Pluto and other planets in our system, Mars, have been controlled, have been manipulated, have been locked into cycles that keep it just spinning back in its evolutionary journey without moving forward. Think about the ring. The ring keeps us feeding back onto ourselves. The snake that bites its own tail, and it just keeps feeding the cycle of samskara, the cycle of suffering, the cycle of reincarnation, just keep spiraling back, and never able to spiral up and out. Because the more souls that continue to spiral back, the more that these beings, these dark overloads, have to feed on. So that timeline is simultaneous. Now, there is also the simultaneous timeline of Saturn in its Christic Sata Ura Devshe Raya expression. There is also the simultaneous incarnation of the Arias version of Earth, which is the deity plane of the Earth. When we are plugging into the astrological world, we can choose to plug in through the fallen black hole matrix, that is tropical astrology, that is Saturn, that is the fear that keeps us and pulls us further and further out of alignment. Every year, the tropical astrology moves further and further and further and further out of alignment. And as we plug into that misalignment, it keeps us in fallen timelines of the celestial bodies of the planets. Or we can recognize that we have the capacity to exist within any time band. And once we free ourselves from the confines of the matrix here, we can once choose again to connect to the divinity that exists within the core of the planetary bodies. We can choose to plug into the deity planes of Saturn. We can choose to plug into the deity planes of the Earth, of Pluto, of Mars, and connect back into their true divine celestial presence and energy and inspiration and support to align ourselves with that here and now. So we have a choice to be looking at this conjunction from a lens of survival, of fear, or we can allow ourselves to tap into what the universe really wants us to do. It wants us to see clearly through this illusion. Now let's talk about Pluto. because this is going to go very deeper now. Pluto. Let's go back here into the zodiac. Pluto, this beautiful P, 240 plus years to move its way through around the sun. Pluto, yes, it represents great cosmic cycles. It represents generational patterns, right? Entire generations have Pluto in the same sign. Everyone who's being born right now is going to have Pluto here in Sagittarius. Everyone who is in, my generation, the millennial generation, we were Pluto in Scorpio. The generation that came before us, Pluto in Libra. The generation before then, Pluto in Virgo. It represents bigger generational cycles. The Romans said Pluto was the god of the underworld. That being said, so we've taken that and we said, okay, well, Pluto's the god of the underworld, so Pluto must mean, depth, darkness, transformation, death, rebirth. Pluto governs Scorpio, another place in the zodiac that traditional astrologers have feared. If we go before the Romans, who were inundated into this Babylonian matrix, if we go back to where this word comes from, Plutos, which is the Greek word that meant wealth and riches. Pluton was the god of wealth. P-L-E-U, comes from the root pi, which meant to flow. It's very rare that you hear people talking about Pluto representing wealth and flow and abundance and riches. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about, okay, so this person has Pluto at a really good aspect. They'll be able to be successful through business, or they might receive riches over here. But it's not talked about as prevalently as it really should be, because of what it really actually represents. Because if we did continuously talk about the deeper meaning of Pluto, what it truly represents, then we would see the deeper trap of the plutocracy that this matrix has represented. Plutocracy is a government ruled by the wealthy or an elite or ruling class of people whose power is derived from their wealth. If you want to know what a plutocracy is, look around, because you're living in it. If we tap into the divinity of Pluto, we receive the ability to transform our life force energy through the rising up of Kundalini into cosmic consciousness, and to tap into our unlimited potential and the true abundance of spirit. It is alchemy, which is why the occultists and witchcraft are often here considered plutonic, scorpionic energies. Pluto gets a bad rap a lot of the times because it was discovered at the same time as the rise of Nazism. So Pluto is often assimilated with being found and Nazism rising, so it must mean that this was because of Pluto, and Pluto is violence and elimination and death, shadow. When we tap into Plautos, the divinity of this planet, Pluto, the lesson is of our Kundalini energy. It is the fire of consciousness that penetrates us open from the depth of our being, awakening us deeper and deeper into the truth of our being as the phoenix rises from the ashes through Pluto. Grand Trine and fire, illuminating us to our true nature, helping us to become more of ourselves, helping us to initiate a brand new vision. Pluto, Kundalini energy, consciousness rising up from within us, allowing us to tap into our true divine nature. Sata Ura Devshiraya is the energy and essence of flow and expansion through understanding the governing laws of the universe. Sata Uradevshe Raya is an incredible teacher of the universal laws. Sitting with that energy will usher you into a deeper understanding of how this universe works and how you can work in accordance with it to be unlimited. Why do you think that planet was then kept inside of this cage of Saturn? The death of truth, the death of true universal wisdom, true universal law. Because if we were tapped in truly deeply as a whole collective to universal law, we would not be able to be enslaved. So you can choose. You can choose to plug into the death process of Pluto, to plug into the painful transformation, the need to just survive this transit, the need to shield yourself from Saturn. Or you can choose to plug into the transmutation of matter into spirit, progressively awakening your consciousness to merge with the infinite, to tap into the wealth of the universe, to tap into universal laws, to tap into your true divine nature, to allow the sun of truth, your soul, to shine through the illusion and to break you free from the mutant matrix. Now, that is what's happening. So, what should you offer to the fires of this Grand Trine? All allegiances and alliances and contracts that have kept you bound to being a slave at a soul level to these dark overlords, setting yourself free to reconnect to your divinity, to your Christic code, to your deity plane, essence, body, self. And with that all being said, I know that it can feel like a lot sometimes. I like to encourage the people that I work to remember the power of their word. Everything begins in fire, including word. And fire is also the the destroyer. It burns through the delusions, the illusions. So we can use our word, our power to command our freedom and our sovereignty, which is ultimately the big vision that the cosmos is ushering us into now, sovereignty. In order for us to move into the Capricorn period, which we are not there yet, a lot of people who are plugged into the tropical system. So here's the thing. The tropical system is designed to keep people out of alignment. Having people believe that we are in a Capricorn time, they believe that they are in building. It's time to start building it. We are in it. We've done it. We broke free. We know. When in truth, we are actually in the time of breaking free from the illusions, of seeing clearly. It is a time of real, deep disclosure. Disclosure has not happened for the masses yet. It happens through this energy in Sagittarius. We will see disclosure in this cycle. Then we can move into Capricorn and start building collective visions. With that being said, let's boogie into the human design here. Right. So last week's human design, we started talking about the cross of Maya. It began on Saturday. We are working with the cross of Maya Monday and Tuesday. So throughout this entire conjunction, we are in the cross of Maya. Wednesday through Friday, or actually, excuse me, Wednesday and Thursday, we shift into the left angle cross of obscuration. And Friday through Sunday, we are in the cross of laws. Now, the cross of Maya, we went into in depth, right? We are in this Maya, we are seeing the illusion for what it truly is. That is the Maya. And now the sun is at a placement where it is shining through that illusion, through the illusion of death and scarcity, through the illusion of religious and governmental corruption, through the illusion of playing small. It's time to see clearly. If you avert to this because you think, oh, she's conspiracy talking, oh, this is that, oh, da 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 da. Pause and without taking any sides. Just open your mind up to the potential of what is being shared. If you feel so stuck and rigid in the way things have to be, this cross is inviting you to burn those beliefs down and to just open yourself up to the potential that there is something to this. Now, for the gene keys this week, let us, instead of looking at the sun and earth as we normally do on this transmission, let us actually look to what's going on in Pluto and in Saturn throughout this conjunction. So, well, we also have the sun up here as well because the sun's in it. 61, sun, Saturn, 61, Pluto, 61. Now we also see up here, Mercury is also in 61. 4 planets in the 61st gate or gene. Now, if we can zoom this in, 61 is right up here in the center of the crown. It is a crown center gate, which means it's a pressure center. It creates a mental pressure to involve, to descend consciousness down into our body. It is the gate of mystery and its inner truth. And it initiates, right? Initiation, fire, the mutation in our thinking. And it is tasked to transmute and share that knowledge without needing any proof. No logic. Gene 61 is truth. It knows, period. That is it. If you need validation right now for everything that's being said, if you need explanation to the truth that's being said through this gate, you're missing the point, because 61 just brings through the information and it doesn't need validation. It doesn't need proof. It simply knows, and those who are ready to receive it will feel that in their being. They will feel a resonance in their belly, and they will not need validation, because deep within you, you know the truth of what is happening in the solar system, on this earth and beyond, and it is time to trust it. This gene is known as the Holy of Holies. The shadow is psychosis, and this shadow of psychosis is the dark aspect of the feminine mind, the right brain, that is able to see the whole picture and yet gets lost in all that it's able to see, thus losing touch with reality. And it is through this shadow that the feminine aims to answer the question of why. Why do we exist? And it answers that question through religion. It looks outside of itself for the answer to the chaos that it experiences within itself, which keeps us forever distant from actually experiencing reality. It keeps us in the Maya, the illusion. Our true nature of reality is frequency, and it emerges from within us, from the fire within it. And it cannot be found in the external. So the shadow of psychosis, looking for why we are here, looking for purpose and meaning in the external, keeps people playing in victim cycles of worship. The moment we worship another, we put ourselves below that being. And anytime we put ourselves below a being, we are victims to that being. That being is either going to perpetrate us, a God that smites, or that being is going to save us, Jesus, the Savior. And we will seal ourselves forever in a lower frequency as long as we worship that being. The deeper energetics of this powerful moment in time, the sun shining its light through the delusion of religion, the delusion of worshiping something outside of yourself. You are the creator. You are divinity. The gift of this gene of inspiration is, as Richard read, and to quote him from the Gene Keys text, Richard says, the gift of inspiration is what happens when you stop worshiping God and start becoming God. If you don't resonate with this word of God, what we're really talking about here is actually not God. That's just what our human mind conceptually can grasp for the source of all that is. We are the source. The source exists within us. And the process of awakening inspiration is not like, oh, I'm inspired by this idea. It's a process of awakening to our inner breath, our inner life force, prana, chi, and releasing it out into the world, which requires us to dismantle all the illusions that we have built in the mind. And it forces us to directly question our inner truth that has been built in the mind and then to destroy it. Inspiration first comes in bursts and moments of time when the world that we perceive is altered. So these first inspiration bursts might come while people are, on ayahuasca or taking magic mushrooms or, in deep meditation. Because once the inspiration comes, once this burst happens, the world that we perceive is forever altered, and it can never go back to the way that it was before that moment of inspiration. Inspiration is the spark of awakening. '61, this energy, 4 places. Y'all, this is the time for real, true collective awakening, and this happens through the revelation, the disclosure. Mercury here is exalted. 61, exalted. That's what this upward triangle is. It is saying now is the time for truth. The city of the 61st gene is sanctity. This is experiencing life beyond all form, beyond all sense of self, beyond all beliefs. It is a samadhi. It is the absolute pure devotion to spirit, to consciousness. It is the dissolution of all constructs of the mind. Now let's go into the unconscious. Let's go into what's happening unconsciously. And we talked about 32 in the last Power Divination. So we're just going to dive into, that would be the sun. We're going to dive into 38, what's unconsciously happening in Saturn, and 54, what's unconsciously happening in Pluto. Now, 38 here is down in the root. It is also a pressure center. 54 right on top of it, also a pressure center. All 3 of these genes that are impacting us during this conjunction are in the pressure centers. They are pressing us to evolve. Wake up, humanity. 38. Saturn here. 38 is the struggle to know what is worth fighting for. It pressures us to seek for the purpose and meaning to life. It pushes us to find our greater purpose in life, why we are here. And it pushes us to go within to find the answers. And within the shadow of this gene, we have struggle. And struggle holds the awareness that we only struggle when we are disconnected from our true purpose. Are you struggling right now? Are you just getting by? Look to the places where you are taking things personally. Look to the places where you are feeling a victim to life. Look to the places where you are struggling to find the intention that is going to bring you inwards. Stop looking for answers externally and start going within to understand the purpose of your life. And you will no longer suffer once you realize the gift of perseverance, which is the energy that naturally is able to face obstacles of life from a space of alignment, from a space of purpose. It actually strives through obstacles. So in the gift frequency, in the Siddhic frequency of honor, there isn't struggle. There isn't obstacles. It's just how we approach them. We are not defeated and victimized by them. So we become perseverant. We actually see the obstacles as the fuel that leads us forward, that pushes us more and more to rise into our purpose. Unconsciously, we are releasing through this conjunction deep, deep patterns of struggle, of suffering. And we are being invited to go within. We are radically penetrating the religious program. Think of this energy that we talked about that established Babylon. What is Babylon? It is the center of religion. At that time, all of this was formulated and this control mechanism began. We are being asked to see this clearly, to stop worshiping something outside of ourselves, to go within and find our true purpose, our true meaning. 54 is the serpent's path of Kundalini. And we've talked about this in depth before in a previous Power Divination. The shadow of this gene is greed. And greed, it helps us to evolve. It pushes us to strive for material survival, and greed is what has allowed us to create this world where you're able to watch this Power Divination on your internet, on your computer, on your phone, wherever you're at in the world. Greed, though, becomes problematic once we are surviving and thriving to keep pushing materially. Our material world will surpass us if we do not rise into the gift of aspiration. And the gift of aspiration is the shift from the desire to accumulate material possessions, mutates and transforms into the desire to attain something more spiritual in nature. The desire for enlightenment, the desire for spiritual growth and evolution. In the Tao, they talk about having a life of leisure and luxury. And what this means, this is stored within this gene, is that when we have acquired genuine wealth, foundation, security, and stability in the material physical plane, we can turn inwards to more spiritual arenas because we're safe, we're secure, our life is provided for. A life of leisure and luxury means that we are grounded and supported and rooted so that we may attain great spiritual growth. Now remember, wealth is not measured by millions of dollars in your bank account. It means that you are wealthy, all of your needs are met, you are connected to the infinite universal abundance, and you are provided for. So that you can take time and energy to go inwards, to aspire to the city of ascension, which is the city of this gene, our spiritual ascension. I hope that you're starting to see the theme, the deeper energetic of what is being penetrated open. Wednesday, cross of obscuration. Thursday, cross of obscuration. In this cross, collectively, our role right now is to find the values and the issues that will be empowering for us as individuals to create change, to use the out-of-the-box thinking that this cross brings in through 6162 here, and to get curious about how do we create change? How do we create a new collective vision? And we call this the cross of obscuration because this cross has such big vision. It's able to think so far outside of the box that it can actually trigger those who are still inside of the box. So we obscure the whole truth, the whole picture of what we're really creating so that we can actually bring it to life without it being tampered by. If you've ever had someone talk to you about, your manifestation powers and to not actually share what it is you're really deeply manifesting, because people then put their opinions, their beliefs, their stories, their limitations into it. And it can actually block you from manifesting that. We are holding what we are building, this new earth vision that we are building. We are holding it in this sacred cocoon right now so that we can actually create it, stabilize it, anchor it, solidify it for the great achievement that will come through it, which is changing people's lives, changing the cycle that we are in. So it is a time of tapping in. Once you see through the illusion, or once the reality has revealed itself to you through this conjunction, when we move into Wednesday, Thursday, it's time to start thinking about your plans, your goals, your visions, and how you can actually put together the structure to attain it, while keeping it in your sacred little cocoon, only entrusting those that you know can hold that vision with you. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Cross of Laws. Now, the Cross of Laws deals with creating, maintaining, keeping, transitioning, building new structures so that we can maintain safety and continuity. And ultimately, it's a time to establish a new order. Laws, in this sense, is not limited to legality, though legality is held within the Cross of Laws. It's also dealing with structures of family, structures of money, structures of community, because structures create order. And this cross is about being one who is able to build and maintain order and structure in the area of life that we choose. And it's important to be really wise within this cross to start seeing what cycles, what structures are done, are complete. We are beyond them now. And it's time to create a new structure. When a structure is broken, when the foundations are, worn out by termites and destroyed by floods and all these things, like, the solution is actually to just build something new. It's not to try to fix something that is broken. This cross recognizes that when something is complete, the best thing that we can do is to create something new. It is time for us to start painting a new vision. What is going to replace religion? What is going to replace government? What is going to replace education? How are we going to actually create structures? Because structure isn't bad. Structure is an important fundamental energy of the universe. What is the vision of the new structures that we're going to be creating, and how do we actualize it? How do we do our part? Now, if you notice the body graph, and this went into the last few weeks as well. Everything in the top of the body graph is open, 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 open. We have really, for the last few weeks, just been in the lower energy centers, which means that these upper energy centers, this is a great time where interference can happen, where we can be, when this is collective energy, where we can be having interference and not self-talk and, being programmed by things of another world, of another energy. The other day, I tapped into a lot of spirits that are wanting to come in and do possessions right now, a lot of energies that are wanting to come in and gate through people's systems so that they can ensure that some of the changes that are wanting to happen in this time are not possible. Protect and shield and clear yourself at all times right now. Clear, clear, clear energy. Command things out of your field. If you feel something funky coming into your field, demand that it leave. Even if you're not sure, maybe it is something that's love, maybe you are curious, just demand it to leave at this time. Right now is not a time to be working with anything outside of ourselves. It is a time to be working within our roots, within ourselves, trusting our intuition, trusting our connection, trusting our gut, trusting our heart. Yes, yes, yes. This Power Divination brought up a lot today. We are at a very important moment in time, and it is bringing through so much light, so much truth. Truth is not something to be afraid of. Truth is what reveals, truth is what heals, truth is what transforms and transcends and spirals us up into a new golden octave. It is through truth that we will emerge into the new earth. This conjunction is not something to be afraid of. It is revealing what is in the shadows, and what is in the shadows is true love. Deep, primal love. I am Ahaumna, the founder of Destiny Mapping. I hope that this Power Divination has brought up some stuff for you, brought up some new questions, brought some things that you can contemplate a bit deeper, brought some things that you can go and research and learn about on your own. If you resonate with this video, do share it. And if you are not already subscribed, be sure you subscribe. Power Divinations come out every Monday, revealing the week energy in a way that you can see it clearly to support yourself, your family, your community, to ultimately rise and thrive. Wishing you all a beautiful week. I will see you next Monday. Bye.